G'day guys, first day of summer today, 1st of December, and it's about 5 o'clock in the evening. So I've just come up to Cora to do some work tomorrow, and I'm going to have a little evening fish. So we're going to focus on the basics of soft baiting, and I'm going to show you guys some of the tricks that I've learned over the years, especially when you start to lose your mojo. Sometimes you've got to go back to the basics to get back into the fish. So let's see how we get on. Just got to set my tension, get that right, get the drag settings right. I fish quite a light drag, and I loosen it as I hook into decent fish. But you'll find when you set this first thing, after you use it for a few casts, you'll find that actually naturally loosens up a bit and you've got to readjust it. Very careful, hand just in under here. There we go. Guys, I lied to you. I did bring a net along for this little puppy. Don't think that snapper would have fitted in it. Why did I bring this net? That's just to show you my next point. You see a lot of people on social media ask what size jig head you should use when you're soft baiting. Well, I did do a vid called Read the Instructions, which talked about rod ratings and matching reels to the rod and matching the line to the rod. So that's worth a good look. The actual question about what size jig head should I use, there's a number of factors that affect it. First of all, is your breaking strain of the fluorocarbon and the braid. The thicker that is, the more resistance through the water, so it'll take a tiny bit longer to get down. But more important than that is the type and size of soft bait you use. So what we're going to do, I'll give you an example here. Get a smelly old gulp out. It's a gulp jerk shad. We'll get a caveman soft bait out as a comparison. So the gulp soft bait, that's what they call a true soft bait. It's meant to be biodegradable. Fish can kind of eat it. And these are what you call soft plastics, which are basically your bait junkies, your Sedman. Most of them on the market are soft plastics. And the difference between the two, it goes down. Watch the gulp. Gulp sinks straight away. That's why I brought the net along. So that naturally sinks. Whereas your soft plastic floats on the surface. There is a massive clue as to what size jig head you should use. So when that question gets asked on social media, a lot of people use gulp. It's a popular type of soft bait, and they'll say 3/8, quarter to a 3/8 jig head is perfect. And it is for this type of soft bait. But when you get one exactly the same size, same style, and one floats, this one really needs a minimum of a 1/2 to 5/8 to give it the same action as the gulp through the water. So there you go, that's my first proper tip. If you're using soft plastics, go a little bit heavier on the jig head. The best way to work out how to fish the lure is just to pop it in the water, lift it up and down a bit and see how it swims. With a jerk shad like I'm using at the moment, you've got to give it more vigorous lifts. So that's often when you see people, they'll be soft baiting and the rod will be going like this, it'll be going like that, and that gives it a good lift. Here we go, we've got a paddle tail on. Good thing about paddle tails, they've got a nice natural action. Paddle tails just have a beautiful action when they're sinking through the water column or when you lift them. Look amazing. Look bloody awesome actually. That's why paddle tails are my favourite. They're so easy to fish. So all you have to do with the paddle tail is cast it out, let it sink to the bottom, and just lift it up about 20 centimetres. So all you have to lift it up and then let it drop down, wind it a little bit, lift it up, drop it down, just keeping in touch, and it's actively working the whole time. There's such an easy soft bait to work and use. That's why they're so successful. They both float, but obviously the bigger profile and bigger bait's going to take more to pull it down through the water. With a 7-inch soft bait, I'm mostly using a 3/4 or a 1 ounce jig head, and that will give me the same feel through the water column as what I'm getting when I'm using a smaller soft bait and a lighter jig head. We're in 9.5 meters. How long does it take for the soft bait to sink to the bottom? We'll count it down. Here we go, guys, hitting the water. 1001,
1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007,
1008, 1009. Here we go. Basically 1 meter a second. Makes it nice and simple. Often you get into bad habits. When you're having a lot of success, you'll just be casting, catching, casting, catching. Then you go through a quiet patch. And often you've got to go right back to basics. And the snapper tend to be hard on the bottom when they hit a lot of the times. So you've actually got to get the lure to the bottom. So if you cast out and only give it about 4 seconds, you're not concentrating, and you're 9 meters of water, you're not on the bottom water column where the snapper are, so you tend to be moving the lure too high up and you're not getting the hits. And quite often when you're having a slow day, just go right back to basics, count your soft bait down when it hits the water, count the depth down. Just count it down, guys. 1001,
1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013.
So here you go, that's a bit slower. So that just shows you the difference. Even though we had a 1 ounce jig head compared to half, the bigger profile of the bait takes a lot longer for it to sink down through the water column. It's a bloody good example. So that's why I can quite often use a 1 ounce and 2 meters of water with a 7-inch soft bait. I can be casting in close and just start working it straight away. Just keep it, when you feel it hit the bottom and start snagging, you lift it a little bit. It's a bad habit to put your finger like that to feel, because when one hits, it just gives it enough to get off. But sometimes it's hard to break these habits. Really, you shouldn't put your finger there at all. Maybe wondering what the difference is between a bait caster overhead style reel and a spinning reel. Basically for me, 50-50 is what I take. They both have their advantages. With spin, I've been using spin all my life, so I'm used to it. Snagged. So I'm used to it, but the advantage of the overhead is under real windy days. Here we go, got a fish on. Not bad, second cast. On the really windy days, it lays the line straight on the water. It's got a little bit of resistance coming off the spool, and it makes a big difference. With a spinning rod, you'll get a big loop off to the side with the wind, and it's hard to stay in touch with the soft bait. So on windy days, the overhead has a massive advantage. Here we go, first baby. It's actually legal. Back you go, buddy. Back to Tangara. The other advantage of a spinning rod is you don't have to concentrate when you're casting compared to a overhead bait caster. I'll show you that later on when I'm casting it. But you've got to be 100% focused with the bait casting reel. So the moment the soft bait hits the water, you've got to engage the reel so it doesn't get an overrun and give you a big tangle. With a spinning rod, it's easy. You can just chuck it behind you without looking. Makes a big difference. So the overhead rod's disadvantage is in the dark, because you obviously can't see when it's landing on the water, and you can't really place your cast. I know a lot of people think an overhead rod is more accurate with the casting, but it's probably just used to it. I don't think there's any real difference with the casting between the two rods. Bait caster in the wind, spinning rod in the dark. Any other situations, doesn't really matter what you're using. Cast overhead. Just watching as it hits the water, thumb on the spool. As soon as it touches down, so you don't get the overruns. And then you can allow it to start sinking down through the water column. One advantage of the overhead like this overhead bait caster is you can the descent through the water column, you've got more control of it, and you can feel the takes and react if you have to. This type of reel also has a big advantage when you see fish on the sounder, it's much easier to drop straight down. So it's a case of casting out and then just feathering it through like that, through your hands, and it straightens all that bow out. You're not really touching it much, it's just guiding it through like that through your hands. Well guys, thanks for watching. It's coming to the end of the vid, but just to sum it up, you notice I didn't talk about what's behind me, brands of soft baits. To be honest, they all work. If they didn't work, they wouldn't be sold in the shops. So I don't get too carried away by that. So when you're out in the water, just change things up. If things aren't working, change your colours, change your style of soft baits, and see what's working on the day. The key points to take out of this are to identify what type of soft bait you got. If it's a gulp that's going to sink naturally through the water column, use a lot lighter jig head. Soft plastics, you've got to beef up the weight of the jig heads to get the same action. The other key point is to put the soft bait over the side of your kayak or over the side of your boat and just watch how it works, how your little movements will affect that, so you can replicate that when you get down into the zone. And remember to work out your sink rate. It's going to vary depending on the size of the soft baits you're using and the size of the jig heads. So in a nice calm bay somewhere, just stop and count how long it takes to get down to that depth so you know the sink rate. If you concentrate on those few key basics, it's going to improve your fishing a lot. So we'll catch you guys in the next vid. Cheers guys, thanks for watching.